Introduction. Sadhana for Self-Realization is not a new book as regards its subject matter or content. It is a selective compilation of matters relating to sadhana already published, some within the last decade, others much earlier, as chapters or sections of works on tantric doctrine and discipline by late esteemed friend and collaborator Sir John Woodroffe, that's Arthur Avalon, or by us independently. Under the section Mantra of the present compilation, the two chapters on Mantra Sadhana and Gayatri have been taken from The Garland of Letters by Arthur Avalon, and we may suggest that the opening chapters of that book be read also, as preparing for the understanding of this. The section on Kundalini is from the last section of the magnificent introduction he wrote to his Serpent Power, where the theoretical basis of Kundalini Yoga have been examined, in course of which our point of view and appreciation of the matter also appeared in the form of detailed correspondence. In the present compilation, only the correspondence on our side has been reproduced. Correspondence on both sides and what follows should, however, be read carefully from that book. Kundalini is admittedly a difficult knot to untie, and her ascent along what is called the path of Shushumna, piercing the 6 chakras, is not easily understandable, ideally or realistically. Yet the book, which may be and has been taken as a classic on the subject, has gone the furthest length that description and explanation starting from our level of experience and comprehension can go. It should, however, be remembered that in these, as also in other allied matters, we come across a shoreless deep, which, to quote the words of Hume, "Our line is too short to fathom." Yet to understand what may be fundamentally ununderstandable, we have no choice other than trying with our line as it is, and as far as it can go. Manana, or understanding, is a necessary step leading to that concerned intuitive effort of the mind called nididhyasana, meaning meditation, which opens into direct realization or truth, sakshatkara. The section on Yantras is the reprint of a small book we wrote, mostly as notes, earlier. In this we are in deeper waters still. Nevertheless, our exploration there has been from as settled and dependable bases as could be theoretically prospected. We have studied in this the evolution of one yantra in particular, which may be taken as typical of other yantras. Shri or Gayatri, for example. The 2 articles on Tantra are reprints from The Cultural Heritage of India by the Ramakrishna Mission, in which they appeared as our contributions some years ago. The articles speak for themselves. Now, in the pages that follow in this introduction, we attempt in a way as succinct and summary as possible, laying a background for a general appreciative survey of the subject matter as dealt with in this book. For fuller understanding, one should go to the sources as explored by Sir John and others. We may also, in all humility, refer the reader to our laborers in the field in collaborations with Sir John, or made independently. More specially, we refer to our recent book, Japa Sutram, in Sanskrit Bengali in 6 volumes, an English short summary of which has been very recently published by Messrs. Ganesh and Co., Madras. This summary may be read as a brief commentary on such topics as prana, vak, bindu, nada, kala, and ardhamatra, touched upon in this introduction and in the book itself. Consciously or unconsciously, self-realization has been accepted as the common as well as the fundamental object of human pursuit and endeavor. But the two terms, self and realization, have not meant the same thing always and for all. It is so because the terms have been understood differently by different persons, or even by the same person in different contexts and conditions. The difference naturally has hinged on the fact whether one is looking at a thing from outside and aside, or from inside and straight away, and consequently whether one is having a core, kernel, and whole view of the thing, or only a crust or sheath or husk and segmentary view. It is the former which gives one, so it has been claimed, the true view, the true self or Atman. Two views so contrasted may be called the whole integral view and partial cross-sectional view. That the inside and integral view of any object in our minds or outside is necessary, and to a certain extent possible, is a common position of both science and philosophy. In fact, it is this recognition that opens the way and leads inquiry and investigation along that way, aspiring to reach truth and reality in any given field or province, or in the world as a whole. Our sense experience and our ordinary subjective experience give us a surface picture of things and relations, or, to employ an ancient and significant figure of speech, they show us the nemi, meaning outer orbit or circumference, but conceal practically from our view the aras, meaning the connecting radii, and almost always the nabhi, meaning the navel or the central origin and support, without knowing which nothing is truly and really known, and which, being known all, is basically and realistically known. Tasmin vijñāte sarvadin vijñātam bhagavati. That nabhi is, or opens to the Atman in all things. Both science and philosophy move forward to the search and finding of this nabhi or Atman in things. For this they seek and have to find the connecting and leading lines, the aras. Whether it be a dewdrop, a radioactive atom, the germ cell of a plant or an animal, a simple idea or feeling or a complex in the mind, the path of inquiry starts with the nimi, the surface picture. The current course of an event, the normal behavior of an object, is in that sense gross or sthula. Its appearance poses a problem. What and how? Its exhibition stimulates inquiry, which presents for more and more intelligible information and satisfying explanation, for knowledge assuring increasing validity and value. So the mind, which must know and satisfy itself, cannot simply go the round of the perimeter of an object or relation as commonly presented to it. It seizes upon the suggestive and significant points in the passing picture, which may open into the ground picture, giving the significant, informing basic outlines. In common language, it raises the question, what does this movie show for me mean, and how has it to be appreciated? This latter leads to the exploration of rtam, principle or law. Connected with the question relating to this how is the other one relating to what, the inquiry as to the substance, substratum or reality. This opens the way to the knowledge or elucidation of satyam, the thing as it is in itself. For a whole and integral view, which is also in the ultimate summing up the true inside view, the two lines of inquiry for the finding of Ratam and Satyam should meet conclusively at a settled or setting point, the Nabhi or Atman. This is the Karana, the ground, origin, cause, and the abiding meeting of all that is seeming and passing. In between the Nabhi and the Nemi, between the Stula or gross and Karana, meaning causal or original, the Aras, the connecting and leading lines and links, the lines of process as we may call them, negotiating between the hidden cause and the exhibited effect or effects, must be traced and worked also. They throw the bridge or setu, so to say, by which we can span the dark or obscure interval between a thing as it seems and behaves and as it really is and subsists. Commonly and at this end of the journey, the setu also, the leading links, are not quite palpably patent. They are subtle. They have to be explored with scrutiny and care, adjusted and followed with judgment and decision. In one word, we have to evolve our system of procedure, both in theory and practice, consistent and adequate, which shall both shew and apply the Ratam, meaning law or principle of process, opening and leading to Satyam, meaning reality, residing at the heart of existence. It is what formulates a scheme of operation and transaction between a root cause and its apparent emanations or effects. Thus, if the origin, meaning what holds and formulates, be called the root matrix, the curve as actually formulated the result working itself out, then the process or procedure working it out can logically be represented by a system of equations, which are the aras. In mystic language, if the nabhi or origin be svar, and the resulting curve of a thing or event, nemi, be bhur, the linking and equating processes are bhuvar. We thus have the three great or maha vritis, which precede the Gayatri mantra, for example. Virti literally means what specially gathers home or origin and formulates, for example, a pattern. We may again approach the position like this. Some phenomena of experience, outside or inside, is given. It is our this in the context of actual happening or occurrence, or bhur, at that moment. Having this, we inquire, what is this? What is it substantially and causally? This what we inquire about is the nabhi or navel. It represents Svar, the creative and evolving source. But evidently a way, a link must have to be found, leading from this end of the inquiry to that. In fact, the what end of the inquiry presents both these aspects of this and that. If, as in relativity ideas, we conceive a this line and a that line, or planes as we may call them, then the problem of knowledge and appreciation is to find a stable or dhruva point where the two lines or planes meet and consort. That point is what. That point, however, is not unmoving, as and when pursued. As it is pursued, it recedes into realms of ever deeper truth and wider generalization. Nevertheless, a position of stability in the process of the inquiry will have to be found. At any rate, such a position of concurrence and stability must forever remain the end of all inquiry. Inquiry must develop its spirit, power, and technique to the requisite degree and extent that it may reach the end. This requisite demands and sets for it what we may call the how line. It may also be called the process line, bhuvar, the antariksha which spans the gap, removes the hiatus between this and that. So approximately 3 lines or vriatis may be represented as a polar triangle. This line is a horizontal line in a given plane of experience. That line is another in a higher and truer plane. What intervenes and separates this from that is the process medium or interval, which is active and negotiates between point events on this line and point origins, if we may so put it, pending a further definition of point. Suppose we picture a stable point in the source or swar line as an apex to be reached from this, the given, the actual. If for that purpose we could drop a perpendicular, meaning the shortest straight line, our process or procedure would be ideally simplified. That would be the line of direct descent. In sadhana, that line would represent the way of revelation, intuition, and inspiration, for example. But since the apex commonly lies at an altitude too high for our common cognizance, we have necessarily to start from any point in this line, and have to explore as best we can a process route that may lead to the high up apex or summit. As it is commonly a route of conjecture, hypothesis, approximation, adjustment. It is a search through probable suggestions, tentative explanations and explorations. If, fortunately, two or more such lines of tentative approach toward the far-off apex meet there or somewhere believed as near about, we get what one might call a polar triangle of logical comprehension and appreciation. Such tentative sketching of the how line, the process of interval, is the beginning of science and possibly also its end. The aim of philosophy is to re-examine the entire setting and set-up of the world picture, in matter, life, mind, spirit, for example, with a view to satisfying itself, so far as that may be possible, that the tentative sketch lines have the requisite correct orientation, so as to consistently converge and synthetically unify at the apex of intelligibility. And one may claim for practical wisdom, for example the Upanishad, that its object is to discover and make available in full measure the shortest, surest right line, the direct home line or the main axis, the way of inspiration, intuition and meditation, for example, which may open to and ensure conclusive consummation of the quest. Be it noted, however, that of the many possible and tentative routes of common approach, some may actually be more direct and symmetrical than others. So in our approach to truth and reality, the possibility of alternative routes is open to us in the beginning and also at every turn, and consequently there is insistent need for correct choice, proper selection of paths. The direct, straight, promising route is Ratsya Pantha, the path of what is fundamentally right, which is also the way par excellence of Chanda. Rhythm, symmetry, harmony in the soul and substance of creation, as well as in its expression and unfoldment. And this is the way of realization. We have introduced the polar triangle made of 3 lines, this, that, and thus, in the hopes that such a representation, diagrammatic as it is, may be appreciated as a total correlational review of the universe of things and relations, analyzable in terms of the 3 coordinates of this as a given, of that as the origin, and thus as the process of correlation and transaction between the two. Such representation as point, line, triangle, etc., is also important, as we shall see, when we come to grapple with the mystic power diagram called Yantra. The line of the triangle, or any diagram for that matter, may however be derived differently, according to different frames of reference, from the fundamental concepts of continuum, point, measure, sense, phase and limit, for example. In the present context, our starting base is the given datum of ordinary experience, that is inner or outer, and from this line or plane we inquire and also aspire to know that which may be the substance, source and origin of this, and also the way and manner how that origin has evolved and manifested as this, and conversely, how this can work up to and realize itself as that. The way or process line of both deduction and reduction, or sublimation, has in practice been not one, but many, some more direct and symmetrical than others, in consequence of which a need insistent and an interest paramount ever remains for selecting one that may run as closely akin as possible to the direct home line, the main axis of ascent and descent, for example, the path of Sushumna as in yoga. Some of the other ways, lacking the right sense and orientation, true light and correct lead, may frustrate their own aim of knowledge and realization, because the direct line, the main axis, is what connects this with that. For example, thou art that, core to core, substance to substance, Atman to Atman, leaving aside as completely as possible the disconcerting, distracting sheaths, accidents or accretions. Its method is consistently and persistently one of selection of that which is essential and fundamental by rejection of that which is opposite. For this end, the seeker of the home line must be ever on a high vigil, so that the way may never go wrong in its sense and orientation, that the light that shews and leads the way may never play false and mislead. It is like walking upon the keen edge of an open razor. The mystic wayfarer forewarns. We started our quest after the Self with the help of one suggestive diagram, the circle or sphere, chakra, with its nabhi, ara, and nemi, and we tried to appreciate the significance of each bearing upon what may be called an inside integral conception of the object of our quest. The real Self is to be found at the nabhi, which being found, both the ara, meaning the process lines, and the nemi, that is, as it actually moves or behaves, will be deduced and made causally and roundedly understandable, and which, not being found, the other two will be separately or jointly meaningless, and possess only a semblance, not the substance of conclusive validity and value. For example, the central point of reference, which evolves and holds all, not being fixed, and not being directly aimed at the aras, the process lines or lead routes, may go wayward, cross, counter, and frustrate one another. They will be jimha, meaning tortuous, and not riju, meaning straight. And if we define Self as the Atman, meaning the core substance and basic norm of every form of existence, whether material, vital, or mental, then it ought to be evident and clear that this Self, for example, even that of an atom of matter, or of a quantum of energy, or of an interval connecting point events, cannot be truly and completely known by process lines that cross and entangle one another, and thus fail to curve out a straight route to the origin or matrix which evolves, sustains, and explains all. So many of our present lines of inquiry and investigation in the different fields of knowledge, though they have gathered a great deal of what we may call depth momentum, and have consequently resulted in many strikingly important, deep layer explorations, have as yet lacked the quality of original one-pointedness and congruence, which alone shall shew the real self in things and make us realize it. Whether our starting point be the Nemi or the Bhumi, meaning the circuit of a normal behavior or the plane of a given experience, we must address ourselves to the discovery and practical availability of Ruju and Riddha, the straight and charged lines of knowledge and endeavor, which, not mutually crossing or entangling, will bring us to the core of substance and power in anything, the center or summit of the starting Nemi or Bhumi. If supreme value and validity be our ultimate end, the way must be one of valor or virya, wedded to victory that never accepts divorce or dissolution, discomfiture or defeat. The difference between the standpoints of Nemi or Bhumi is, generally speaking, that between a thing regarded as a point in action and a thing as a point acting. In the first, it is primarily as it moves and functions. In the latter, as it is and subsists. And the two are correlated. The one has to obey the reigning rule of Ritam, the other to conform to the sovereign norms of Satyam. That the one is to be correlated to and combined with the other is indicated by the mystic formula Ratanka Satyanka, meaning the right form and the real norm, which opens the well-known Shishtri Shukta of the Rigveda. In most of the power design diagrams or Yantras, again, the circle and the triangle go together. If we inquire about and have to realize the nature in itself or Swarupa, the Tattva or thatness of an object, for example, my own real self, the natural way will be to start on what has been before suggested as the Bhumi of the polar triangle, this, that, thus, and reach by as virile or viryavat and direct or ruju a process as possible, the apex or summit at the highest level of immediate experience. I have to begin by asking, what am I to myself or to others like myself here and now on this given plane of experience, and push up higher and higher along the thus line, which is sadhana, leaving aside one after another the sheaths or koshas of non-essentials that veil or vitiate the opening and leading light, and finish with the realization of the true pure self or Atman. If, on the other hand, my object be to trace a correct and complete curve of my self's emergence from and re-emergence or return unto the fundamental matrix, Brahman as the origin and end of all becoming, my natural way will be, as before indicated, to start as a point on the Nemi of the cosmic cycle of behavior. Choose a method and route by which factors causing eccentricities and unharmony curvatures may be eliminated, so that my way as here and now may not cross and counter my way as there and hereafter, but lead in consummating harmony and congruence to the fundamental source itself, which is Jyotisyam Jyoti, meaning the light of lights, and Rasanam Rasatama, meaning the essence or quintessence of any essence. For this, the guidance of the power divine as Guru Shakti, meaning power as master teacher, is essential. The master speaks now within, then outside, and finally everywhere. As it ought to be clear, the approach to Atman in accordance with the cycle scheme, or with the triangular, from Nemi or from Bhumi, Pravritri or Vitri, behavior or actual being, can mean only a difference in standpoint. If it be the self that we are in quest of, then evidently our seeking of the true self may be a double-phase process. It may relate to self regarded as a point of unique intrinsic individuality, or vyakti, or as a member of the world organization as a whole, or abhivakti. In other words, self may be investigated bindu-wise or nada-wise, point-wise or continuum-wise, as an entity or as a process. If the former, the triangle; if the latter, the circle, will be the natural suggestive scheme of the method to be followed. In objective investigations also, the contrast as well as the correlation of the two viewpoints may be noted. For example, a dewdrop may be studied either intrinsically or externally with respect to environing conditions. Both must be coordinated. We have been making our inquiry in such diagrammatic fashion, with a circle or a triangle, simple or otherwise, because in our sadhana for realization, we have practicality at every stage, to work out our way by means of an appropriate instrument or apparatus, yantram. It is what brings the forces working for a given end under the rule of ratam, or law, in conformity with the scheme and method requisite and adequate for working out the end. Yantram, in this sense, is thus needed not for our sadhana alone. It is needed for the power that evolves and works the universe in totality or in detail. So what we have said here about Nemi or Bhumi, Nabhi or Murudha, meaning apex, may be taken as an introduction to the understanding of an admittedly difficult matter, as dealt with in the section Yantram. In the Nemi scheme, for instance, we are in search of the right system of aras, how, or process lines as we have called them, which without crossing or confounding one another will be adequate and sufficient for the purpose, which is reaching the navel, which supports and projects all. And it is yantram that reduces or can reduce them to such a centrally collected and poised system. Yantram is the science as well as the art of the right process line, straight or symmetrical, that efficiently or successfully negotiates between what we start from as this, and where we must end and realize as that. Referring to the section on Yantram, it will be found that logically the Rju or straight emergence precedes as premise the emergence as harmony curvature, which has been called Shushumna. For such emergence, both pure Bindu, or point, and pure Nada, or continuum, must be evolved as harmony and symmetry pattern of all kinds by a principle called Ardha Mantra. It is by this that straight measures and ratios are rendered into all manner of harmony measures, commensurable or otherwise, and relations, comprehensible or otherwise. It makes any definite picture, inside or outside, that we may draw, assume not only straight, but also lines of harmony, curvature. It sets the picture not only in a rigid, but more often in flexible and variable frame, partly definable, partly not. And it lays both the picture and its frame on a background of what is not yet definable, and what may be fundamentally undefinable. If the ground cause of all existence be Brahman, then this Brahman as prana is fundamental causal movement, or Mula Spanda. Brahma Vastu becomes thus Brahmadhara. The absolute ground or cause moves to be operation, function, process. This is threefold. It condenses and becomes the point. It expands and becomes continuum. And it evolves segments, phases and aspects and intervals between the two limiting positions according to a principle of rhythmicity or harmonic measure. Broadly speaking, this last is Ardhamatra. Again, as we have said in the same book, Ardhamatra is the setu or negotiating principle which carries number, magnitude and relation into all possible orders and gradations, commensurable or otherwise. As there pointed out, such mathematical entities as pi, etc. are her progeny. Also, as more concretely stated in the same book without Ardhamatra, a lotus seed, for example, will not grow as a lotus in bloom with its beautiful symmetrical curves. Nor will pure nada or pure kala render itself as beautiful music, painting or sculpture. It is Ardhamatra that has made creation in every detail a masterwork of imitable art. It is to be specially noted that, as explained in that book and elsewhere, each bija mantra should wear on its forehead, as Lord Shiva himself does, the Ardhamatra in the shape of a Chandra Bindu. And why? It shows the complete process and pattern of any matrix. Take Om. Is this supreme Vak completely exhibited when it is written or uttered as Aum? No. The Ardhamatra index should be there to indicate the complete range of its creative dynamism and significance. That index indicates that the function rises from Bindu as nada, which differentiates as kala, aspects or elements of individual Vak matrices, which again is reabsorbed into undifferentiated nada, which lapses again into Bindu, where all the three are in coalescence. And further that, on either side of Bindu, there is a mystery bridge by which nada's emergence from Bindu, and also its involution into the same, is effected. This setu is specially Ardhamatra. It is clear that each creative matrix should imply this mystery link, nexus or factor. It will be impotent lacking this. While we were exploring the borderline which marks the descent of the Riju order into Sushumna, the evolution of the straight into curve, of the triangle into circle or cycle, we were confronted with Ardhamatra, the mistress weaver of the riddle of existence and evolution. We could not simply nod her away and go on our own way. Not to speak of the cycles, the rhythms, and harmonic functions that have set the pattern for our appreciated world of experience to exist and move on, even the Riju order, which logic seems to require as a transcendental premise for the actual order of things and relations coming to exist, cannot do without Ardhamatra in a fundamental sense. In the section on Yantras, for example, power posits itself as Bindu, or point. Bindu posits itself as Ruju, or straight line, to begin with, implying difference of direction or sense. And the third phase is, as there explained, the evolution of the triangle. This is followed by what have been explained there as duplication and inversion. Our object there is to trace the evolution of the Sat Kona Yantra, or the interlaced triangle, representing the hexagon pattern of power correlation. This is a typal pattern giving the core picture of other yantras. This may be studied in its own place in the section on Yantra. But try here to recognize the hidden hand of Ardhamatra in the weaving out of the evolved pattern. The mystery passage from mere position to process shews her finger, without which nothing in any order which is at rest or moving in a certain sense will stir or change that sense. Ardhamatra means a matra, or measure, that does not remain static, but grows, accelerates from rid, to grow. The root ur in Brahman also means that. The growth or acceleration may be, and as a matter of fact is, variable, and the variation may be in accordance with harmonies involving what are called incommensurable and imaginary quantities in mathematics. The waves, spirals, cones, and so on, result in consequence of harmonic variations of what is called Ruju by the varying principle of Ardhamatra. Suppose we start with a plane triangle. By revolving this round its perpendicular, we can evolve the cone, for example, and from the cone we can evolve the conic sections, including the circle. The process of revolution by which all these are evolved implies the circular measure angular velocity. And this is what Ardhamatra negotiates to work out. Straight motion becomes thereby curved symmetrically. For example, in the doing of Om or Gayatri, manifest nada rises straight from unmanifest bindu, evolves the wave pattern with manifested sound elements, and then, reabsorbing these, lapses into the unmanifest bindu again. Nadas rising from bindu and its setting in the same are not of the same character. It ought to be patent also that this is the fundamental factor of growth and variation that only evolves power adjustment and power control apparatus called Yantram. It is also required for evoking and developing power sources, roots or matrices, whereby a Nabhi can protect from itself a system of Aras and Nemi, for example. A Bindu or point can move in the required sense, making the sides and angles of a triangle. A bija or seed can germinate and grow into a plant and culminate in the bearing of the seed again. A karma or samkalpa, the will to be and become, can work the self's dynamism so as to fulfill itself as a result or fruit desired. Such working up of the root power matrix is the function of mantram. As yantram is the power apparatus for the adjustment, control, and application of power, having regard to a desired kind and degree of working efficiency, so mantram is what operates the root, matrix, or source of power, so as to generate requisite kind and quantity of energy for creative or other purposes. Mantra, it should be noted, can create as it can sustain and destroy. Yantra relates specially to design or diagram of power distribution and supply. Mantra specially to power generation and acceleration from a suitable source or matrix. And Tantra specially to the right rhythm or chanda, the correct technique, the concerted modus operandi by which mantram operating through appropriate yantram will deliver the goods. So it is by Tantra that mantra and yantra can consort and produce fruit. They represent the three sides of the polar triangle studied before. Or varying the figure, the Nabhi Ara Nimi scheme. If it be asked, where does power come from so as to be available on this level of operation? The answer is mantram, which operates the matrix or root where power lies condensed. It is the that or what of our inquiry. If it be asked, how is it made available to the requisite kind and degree for the production of a desired result, the query may resolve itself into two parts. One relating to the pattern or design of power application, the other to the rule and method of application. We may call the two wherewith and whereby. These together contrive to lay out and work the how or thus line that fruitfully negotiates between where we begin work and where we should end. We can perceive that such ideas of mantra, yantra, and tantra bear a universal import, having unrestricted application in all fields. No concentrated power in any field is worked out, nor is it diffused power concentrated without mantra. Whether power evolves or involves itself, it aims at a limit which, in the sense of expansion, is nada, in that of concentration is bindu. And as we have seen, the aspect of power that negotiates between the two limits as a factor of harmonic variation and acceleration, making the process comfortable to the rhythm of chanda, meaning law of harmony, is ardhamatra. This last is what makes the cosmic process, on the whole and in every detail, riddhyamana, meaning accelerating in the process of plus or minus, and chandoga, meaning conforming to chanda or harmony. If it be asked, what is the power which thus works itself out and works itself in as an unbounded expanding universe, or nada, and as an infinitesimally small yet infinitely potent universe of bindu, the seed of the universe? The answer is ground reality as basic power of movement, prana Brahman. It should be noted here that Shastra has called Bindu not only Vishva Bija, meaning world root, but perfect universe also. And we can perceive why. Bindu is power, point, which as patency, as actually exhibited or manifested, is nil or shunya, and as potency full, purna. It is where the two opposite senses of function, plus and minus, meet and merge as the neutral point, or Bindu Brahman, and from where they emerge and evolve. But we can make a distinction between mantra as a general category, covering all the provinces of world manifestation, physical, vital, and mental, and mantra itself regarded as seed power, that is bija mantra. This is mantra par excellence. This latter is what can work up power from a perfect unlimited source, which Bindu is, or from any matrix closely akin to Bindu, such as the Nabhi is. When Brahman as prana wakes up and energizes and functions from Bindu, where it may be supposed to be infinitely coiled up, it is Nada Brahman, the patent, manifest wonder of the universe, as manifesting. As infinitely coiled up power, it is Maha Kundalini. A bija mantra is what can work up this Maha Kundalini, the magnum matrix as we have called it. It can go into and work up from the fundamental source itself, and it can do this in the Ruju and Riddha, direct and adequately efficient way. The name for such direct homeline is the path of Shushumna. A bija mantra should be able to work power in such wise that it can evolve in full measure and write chanda from the magnum matrix, the fundamental reserve and magazine of power itself, and can also involve all the manifested elements and aspects into the same ultimate source again. It comes fully developed and equipped from Mother's own lap, and finishing its work in the best possible way, in the best possible condition, can return to her own lap again. The first half of the process is Hamsa, which represents the dual aspect of cosmic metabolism, the heartbeat, and respiration. Creation progresses and goes well as long as the mantra of cosmic respiration goes well. To keep it going well is the sadhana both for nature and man. But in both, a tendency is operative by reason of which the rule of Ratam apparently suffers a decline in efficiency and a deviation in rectitude, producing what is called entropy or running down. Ratambhrat, the great law which characterizes Hamsa in all phases and stages of cosmic manifestation, in natural as well as in human history, seems to be in a mood of careless abandon, so to say, allowing a chance for eccentricities and unharmony factors, called Vritra, Panya, etc. in the Vedic stories, to insinuate themselves and disturb the reign of law represented by Hamsa in order. The two wings of Hamsa, the symbolic swan, should move in integrity of power and functional balance, so that creation as a whole and in every detail may be in good order, making for steady, continued progress, that is, abhudaya. One wing is what takes in and what assimilates power, and thereby nourishes and builds. The other wing is what takes out power from its potential store as kinetic energy, supplies this as available to every sort of power station, atomic or astral, vital or mental, and thus helps production as well as reduction in every field or sphere of the universe. The former is the lunar, and the latter is the solar. The mystic Ida and Pingala. To make these two function in harmonic order is the object of Hamsa Yoga. By this yoga, the world, as also the individual, will be assured a balanced and progressive economy, physically, vitally, and mentally. By it, creation will breathe freely, its heart beat soundly, its soul will toil fruitfully and travel to its goal hopefully. Jagat Swasti Mati Vapa. This is what may be called the objective, outdoor, other regarding the altruistic aspect of self-realization. It is essential that the individual self on its journey to its ultimate end cannot profitably or safely bypass or dispense with this. So, be a Hamsa yogi first of all. By this, be assured of a balanced and upgraded all-round vital economy. By this, have the key in your hand that opens the locked door of the great magazine of power, Kundalini. Pranayama in its extended sense is the usual sadhana for this. Mantra, Yantra, and Tantra should be concerted and coordinated for this end. Devotion, knowledge, and action should for this meet at a consummating confluence of integrated sadhana. But the self cannot find here, or in this, Hamsa, its journey's end. The hero who has conquered and mastered nature must come back home to his mother's lap. He is to be Svarat, Atmarat, master of self. The mastery over Nemi or Bhumi, the normal round of behavior or the actual plane of being, is a preparation and prelude in respect of that masterful competency which is needed for reversing the gear of the whole system of outgoing aras, turn them homeward, and make them converge as a direct home line, the path of Shushumna. What is Parak, away or off, becomes Pratyak, towards or near. Pravitri, outdoor activity, becomes thereby transformed into Samavritti, coming back to and possessing what is your own. So Hamsa Yoga is a preparation for and should culminate in So-Hams Yoga. The self then realizes that it is identical in substance with Brahman or Brahma Mayi Mahamaya, that the basis of being, consciousness, bliss is Atman. Realization of this basic identity is the common ground where the yogi, Bhakta, meaning devotee, and Jnani, meaning knower, meet, though their ways of approach may apparently have been different. The direct home line should open to and be available for all. The mystic Kundalini should be roused by all, and by her grace release effected from the ejecting and rotating momenta of the outgoing Aras and Nemi, producing endless cycles of births and deaths, not culminating in the integral realization of the total significance of life. The yogi may adopt one of the principal four ways: Hatha, Mantra, Laya, and Raja. But the ways do not diverge, but converge and meet in the last lap of the journey, where the Hamsa phase of the sadhana has to reverse itself and becomes the Soham phase. In Hatha, the reversing convergence begins where Kechari Mudra, for instance, consummates itself with the nectar from Brahmarandra, or the opening to the abode of Brahman. Or, as the two letters H and T imply the solar and lunar functions in the system noted before, so saturate themselves, like positive and negative electric condensers, that the gap between can no longer keep them apart, but yields to the momentum for their integrated merging and satisfying union. Mantra Yoga, where the main axis of Madhyama Vak reverses its direction from Vaikari to Pasyanti and Para. Refer again to the summary Japa Sutram before referred to. In Laya Yoga, where Brahma Vishnu Granthis or knots have been pierced, which in precise language means the resolving of the projective and angular momenta that create the nemesis of worldly existence and behavior and sustain them by systems of outgoing aras. It is clear that piercing of the third or Rudra Granthi is not possible before the outgoing and angular momenta have been resolved. The third is Laya Granthi itself. But even this is to be pierced and resolved if the object be to transcend the state of Prakriti Laya, which is not Laya in the absolute sense, but a static equilibrium of cosmic potentials, of the three constituent gunas that make nature, which therefore still holds as prisoners in the domain of relativity of Ashuddha Tattvas, meaning impure principles, and mixed or Shankara propensities and processes. This domain has to be conquered and transcended. Rudra, with the Trishula, or trident, in his hand, effects this conquering and transforming emergence from the infinite coils of potentials of the natural order. The Trishula symbolizes the synthesis of a thesis and antithesis, Hamsa and Soham. It is Hamsa. Om comes between and rules the two wings of Ham and Sa, whereby the dynamic integrity and functional balance of the two Bindu-wise and Nada-wise components are maintained at the requisite level, and also both are sublimated into a perfect integrated state, which combines perfect patency, expression and fulfillment with perfect potency, meaning and promise. In Raja Yoga, The return or reversal of the outgoing process begins definitely with pratyahara or withdrawal, which releases the self-exploring mind from what we may call its sense floaters and object anchors, and enables it to dive deep into the unfathomed yet shining profundities of being consciousness bliss by dharana, dhyana, and samadhi. In Bhakti Yoga, the Para Prakriti, higher or divine nature, and Daiva Sampat, divine legacy of the Jiva, which ordinarily face and are entangled in the coils of this Apara Prakriti, or lower nature, must return and face his own pure beinghood, and recognize his own true relation to Parama Prakriti, or nature divine. Apara, as the Gita explains, is his organized being, as constituted by the five elements in which his self, with its pragmatic mind and reason, is involved and to which it is subservient. Practically, it is his body self, with its varied reproductions, extensions, and reflections. His para or higher prakriti, which is of divine essence, imperishable and free, and naturally affiliated to God's own prakriti, does not assert itself and does not realize its intrinsic divinity, till it is able to turn back and disown what has made it falsely disown its own. So it is reaffirmed by negating a mistaken negation. It is the recognition of an irrefutable, inalienable relation which under the dominating spell of Apara has not been cognized and acted upon. In Tantric worship generally, our nature is regarded as threefold. Pasu, meaning bound by ties. Vira, meaning the hero bent upon making itself unbound. And Divya, the free, effulgent, playful nature divine. See the articles on Tantra in this book. In Jnana Yoga also, which seeks to establish in actual realization the lost identity of thou and that, the reversing is evident when from the non-essentials or upadhis, of which alone the mind or intellect commonly takes cognizance, it has to turn, look in and seize upon the ground substance common to both. This is what nididhyasana or self-meditation aims at doing. Usually, this is preceded by hearing and thinking from approved sources and on approved lines, Shrana and Manana. We have examined these illustrative cases of the principle of reversible action because it is the principle which the mystic Ardhamitra evolves in its designing, as also resigning of the cosmic constitution in matter and non-matter. It is the principle that underlines rhythmicity and cyclicity. It is what accounts for what may be called cosmic elasticity. A process or function in a given direction is charged with an impetus to reverse itself in the other direction. Hamsa, as we have seen, is the mantric equivalent or operative formula of this cosmic pranana, or breathing. But in its third, or vishama, the apparently asymmetrical and eccentric emergence, the cosmic order does not seem to breathe freely, and its heart beats soundly. Cosmic rhythmicity and the principle of reversible action are impeded by factors that cause obstruction, deviation, and frustration. So, a stream starting from its source cannot complete its full measured cycle and go back to the source again. A drop from the sea is waylaid and lost in the desert. But could it mingle with a running stream seeking the sea? And then the sea in sight, could it pray, "O Swami, promise me again that my last summing surrender unto thee be not tardy, hesitant, or low"? Or, to vary the metaphor, his promise assures the journey's end, fullness and perfection. And how is the promise redeemed? He takes off a string when it is old and rusty, puts a new one to your lyre. When feeble your tune, he pulls it up as lusty. As your theme dulls and declines, he makes it full of fire. Jiva, or the self that has emanated from Brahman, loses its part in the mazes and meanderings of an endless wandering, and is hard put to it to rediscover and regain Ruju, home line. So there is need for sadhana. This is a double aspect process. First of all, make your Hamsa congenial, your friend and ally, so long as you are moving on your Nemi or Bhumi. Make your sadhana dakshina, meaning righting what may be wrong in your actual. When you have mastered this, dakshina by her own grace will reverse the process and make it vama, meaning reversing what was inverted and perverted, what opens and assures the direct home line. Then begins the Soham, realization in right earnest. The two meet in higher synthesis, Haumsa. This again, leaving the polar duality of Hum and Sa, becomes Om. What after that? An absolute consummation of light and beatitude, love and power, from where both mind and Vak return, filling to reach. Sadhana is a synthetic, integrated approach to this goal, to nothing short of it. Bhagavad Gita, Bhagavatam, Yoga Vaishishtam, and the like unmistakably shew this. The reorientation from the Dakshina to Vama requires three postures of the fundamental process principle, which are called Sandhi, Setu, and Meru. Think of a common Setu or bridge, or of a wave with its ascending and descending slopes and crest. In the latter case, the point where the wave rises from the horizontal plane is a Sandhi. There is another where it descends to that plane again. We may call them plus and minus, Dakshina and Vama, according to a chosen frame of appreciation. In Mantra Yoga, where Vaikari or gross japa passes into Madhyama, or the subtle uncreated Vak, the main axis that turns this way or that, the Sandhi on this side, is Avara, meaning inferior, and the one on the other side is Vara, meaning superior. In between the two is Setu, which is the wave or the symbolic lotus petal, for example. In the case of the wave, it is the crest that shows the principal Meru. It is the critical point where working energy or momentum one way changes its sense and becomes momentum in another way. In the case of the triangle, the point or vertex shows the principal Meru. Ardhamatra presides over the evolution and working of this triple scheme of Setu, Sandhi, Meru. Consider in the context of this scheme how from a seed, for example, a plant grows, blossoms, and bears seed-bearing fruit again. When the seed germinates and sprouts, the process picture is representable as a tripartite scheme as indicated above. In drawing a circle, the Meru is specially recognized when the process in the line of the radius transforms itself in a process with angular momentum. In sadhana with mantra, yantra and tantra, the Setu, Sandhi and Meru occupy a place of vital importance. Each becomes charged with its required dynamism, given its required acceleration and direction, raised to its required critical or maximum efficiency, so as to be productive of strikingly great emergent results by Ardhamatra, designing the curve of the process and assigning the value of the function according to this three-phase scheme. Of the three, Mantra Shakti, meaning power operating in and as mantra, relates specially to Meru, the condensed point of critical efficiency, where the seed swells and bursts its sheath, for instance. Yantra Shakti, the diagram pattern of power operation, relates to Setu, and Tantra Shakti to Sandhi, the linking and adjusting factor. These may also be correlated to Bindu, Nada, and Kala, or to Shakti, meaning power, Akati, meaning pattern, and Chanda, meaning law of process. In Vyaharana, meaning systemic japa that may succeed, become samartha of a mantra, Om or Gayatri for example, which is not simple utterance, but is the evolving of a harmonic pranic function starting from unmanifest Bindu, wherefrom manifest unbroken Nada arises, differentiating itself as Varna Kala, meaning letter elements, and then withdrawing this unto itself returns to Bindu. The principles of reversible action and cyclicity should be efficiently operative, and what makes possible such operation is Ardhamatra, with its basic scheme of Setu, Sandhi, Meru. So really, the vidya of mantra sadhana is the right knowledge and correct application, which is vidya, of the esoteric science or rahasya of the mula, meaning basic, scheme of Setu, Sandhi, Meru. He who knows and has mastered this Tripura Shakti, that is, the fundamental power that both evolves from the magnum matrix and also involves what it has evolved into the same, has gained mastery over his sadhana, whatever it may be, and has become a siddha, an adept. If we inquire about the mantric equivalence of the aspects of this basic scheme, we may take the aspects as 3 plus 1, that is, 4. Ardhamatra, seizing upon an infinitely condensed power to evolve and involve Bindu, energizes itself to become the magnum matrix This is Hrim, the, to transform power into process. It produces itself as transition or link principle. Setu with a this way side and that way. This is aim. It is the lead and light principle. As the lead necessarily presupposes phases, aspects, and stages, a principle should be there for adjusting and coordinating. This is Shrim. This relates to Kala as aim, relates specially to Nada, and Hrim specially to Bindu. Finally, for Meru, which we have explained as the decisive climax of matrix operation, there is the bija Krim or Klim. These can be affiliated to Mahakali, Saraswati, Mahalakshmi, and Maheshwari, for instance. As the Meru is directly connected with the base Bindu by a perpendicular, the bija of Mahakali is also Krim. The Chaturvyuha of Narayana, Vasudeva, and so forth, may also be studied with reference to this scheme. Take a stock example, a seed growing into a tree. What thaws the power frozen in the seed and makes it flow is Hrim. What carries this power to the higher levels of organized manifestation is aim. What maintains symmetry and proportion all along is Shrim. And what brings to the continuation of flowering and fruition is Krim. Each of the bijas implies and has to conform to what we have above called the Tripura or Chaturvyuha pattern. Let us take Gayatri. The functional pattern or Kriya Yantra of this can be represented as an 8-petaled lotus. The process of Vyaharana must start from the center of unmanifest potential Vak, that is, Para and Pashyanti rolled, as it were, on the axis of Madhyama, and make itself manifest as a process doing on the Vaikari or outward plane. It is a plane where vibration is produced and reacted upon by a temporary and localized impact factor. For this, it has to pass the setu, which connects the actual this with the potential that. Here, Om rises as Udaya Nada, rising Nada. Agni is the Devata here. Fire leaps up here, burning Topor, Tamas. The rising Om traces a symmetric wave line with its Meru and Sandhis with respect to the continuous basic note, which is the Nada. This is followed by another homologous wave form within a similar Meru, the 3 Vyartis. The third is Tat Savitur Vareniam, pronounced as that. This is also a homologous wave form with its Meru, which is the peak Nada Meru in the whole process picture. The fourth is Bhargo Devasa Dhimmahi, which shows the last lap of sadhaka's own aspiring effort, Prayasa. The fifth is Dio, Yona, Prakodayat, where reversion to Bindu has been set in, and along with it the mood of surrender. When this home line process ensues with the accompanying mood of surrender, when Dakshina becomes Vama, Hamsa Soham. The function changes both its sense and character. The divergent, objectively manifesting systems of pranic spanda, for example physical vibration, become convergent and subjectively collecting and unifying kala, or differentiated aspects and elements that have been evolved, lapse back in their consummating fullness into undifferentiated and unified prana and nada, Vaikari meaning gross, Vak, as also the discursive, deliberating mind drop down on the way, because they have no title and passport to go as far as the mystic Setu which Ardhamatra has laid for passage into the zone of perfected integration, where Nada, Bindu and Kala are in consummated coalescence. Here in the Bindu Meru, which synthesizes both Dakshina and Vama components of the function, and opens the door of perfect self-realization in light, joy and power. The Bindu Meru holds and works the prime axis, which, turning this way, makes one realize the unfoldment of the glory of perfect Shiva Shakti, or Sita Rama, or Radha Krishna, and turning the other way, the transcendental, pure Sat Chit Ananda, Parama Shiva, or Parabrahman also. So the Bindu Meru will open to perfect consciousness as well to pure consciousness. So when the Vama Vritti or Samavritti begins the Japaka of the Gayatri Mantra, he should be fully aware of these cardinal points. His Kriya or function is now collecting and convergent, and not spreading and divergent as before. His mood now is one of surrender or prapatti, and not self-assertive action. His uttered vak is now in lapse into madhyama, the background of uncreated and imperishable nada. His prospecting and toiling mind must now take leave. His prana, identified with nada, and homebound, centripetally drawn mind, iron-seeking the magnetic being, now in the magnetic field, must reach the all-important Setu, cross it, and enter, as before indicated, the empire and abode of self-realization. In this return journey, Soma, meaning the soothing and satisfying principle, presides as Devata. Rajas, the diverging, distracting factor, is what hinders. This should die in the setting peace of illumination. The final Om is Vilaya Om, and should be done like that as a return to peace beatific. The Setu which holds the Bindu Meru must never be jumped across. Here the devotee self must lie, or satitha, in peace, Santa Upasita. It is here that the golden veil that hides Tat Savitur Varenyam Bharga, the light of bliss and beatitude, opens unto it. The above is a picture of the graph of Gayatri Vyaharana, which is not the muttering of some syllables. So long as we are on Hamsa phase of the function making for self-realization. When the path of Shushumna opens, and consequently Dakshina becomes Vama, the Vyaharana should start as a process which rouses Kundalini at the base or Muladhara by its Adi or rising Om, by which the Mula Shringataka Yantra, that is, the triangle of 3 dimensions where Nada, Bindu, and Kala are in coalescence as all creative rest energy, is energized and power is released in the shape of Vyatka, or manifest Nada. Sthiti, or the stabilizing and consolidating principle in creation, is worked and stirred up for this emergence. Its own bija is Lam. Those of the other principles are Vam, Ram, Yam, Ham. Be it noted that Lam and so forth are integrals of the specific or differentiated Varna, or sound, elements which give the formula of each of the chakras. By Om it is churned up, so to say, so that Shakti may emerge and transform itself as the next ascending principle at the Swadhisthana. The 3 Vyahritis, Bhur, Bhuvar, Svar, of Gayatri should effect this. By it, what was conserved becomes current, static becomes fluent, fuel becomes fluent energy ready to become fire. This last is effected in the 3rd phase of the sublimating process. At the Manipura, Nada or Prana sees itself as Tejas, the principle that burns the cosmic fuel so as to transform and inform released and fluent energy as the 10-petaled lotus of creation, the number 10 representing the 10 dimensions or coordinates, the 5 components here, pranas, with the 5 modals as explained in Japastutram, for example. In the first 2 centers, the number was 4 and 6 respectively. The 3-dimensional triangle at the base must have an esoteric Setu Matra added to it so that Ardha Matra may work it up as an evolving function. Note that coiled power is disposed here as 3 coils and a half. The chakric numbers, 6 for example, should be basically, though not rigidly, understood. For instance, 6 equals the 4 of Muladhara plus Dik, meaning sense, and Kala, meaning time, by which undirected rest energy becomes directed and fluent, and so on. It is to be remembered that such mystic symbols turn many facets of meaning. In Gayatri, the lotus of the Manipura should be made to open by Tat Savitur Varenyam. The petals of the lotus of creation feel the urge to open here by the Creator's own rousing, realizing radiation. The next phase is that of the Anahata, where Shakti, centrally concentrated and organized at the Manipura, turns to the continuum again and becomes Vayu, the principle of cosmic movement and radiation. It is Bharga, and it should be meditated upon as such. Then ascent is to be made to the continuum as the background and reservoir of all cosmic spanda or radiation. All spanda rises from this as stress and goes back to it to rest. It is Shuddha, pure, and it is the plane from where divine reason designs and works out creative evolution. It is Akasha, that is, what spreads and manifests, which means the principle that projects as impulsion and spreads as rhythms all this wonder and glory of divine manifestation. So it is here that the fifth phase of Gayatri, Diyo Yona Prakodayat, can receive its affirmed significance. This is to be followed by Vilaya, meaning setting Om, which consummates the process carrying the Japaka to the Bindu Meru at Agnya, which, as said before, holds and works and controls the prime axis, leading to either Savikalpa Samadhi, that is, when the seed of duality yet remains, or to Nirvikalpa Samadhi, that is, where the seed of duality or polarity dissolves, at the abode of Sahasrara, which is the thousand-petaled lotus, or beyond. Agnya is the Meru principle, par excellence. It is here that Om resides and controls the entire Dakshina Vama scheme, opens to supreme integral yoga, or to pure absolute transcendence, or both. What is mantra? Mantra is basically Shakti or power, which, operating on any source, origin or center of concentrated power, can so work it up that it may become available as operative energy. To the requisite degree, and in the required line and sense for the full production of a desired fruit or result, and conversely, the resulting product or function being given can so reverse the process lines that it can re-merge into and realize itself as the Nabhi or source again. Mantra has, therefore, a Dakshina or evolving, and Vama or involving function, Bindu, Nada, Kala, and Kala, Nada, Bindu. This makes its Vyaharana a rhythmic dynamic operation, a cyclic process, symbolized by the rosary in which the entire running thread stands for Nada, the beads for Kala, and the Meru or knot for Bindu. When mantra works specially on a root or seed matrix, it is the Bija mantra. For example, Hrim. H is a reserve of massed power. R works it up as kinetic. E levels it up to the point of critical efficiency. Meru and the Chandra Bindu indicates the rhythmic cycle the process should describe. When again the operating power is conceived as prana, and its exponent or operative base regarded as vak, mantra becomes an especially potent means of sadhana for self-realization. Vak evolves itself as a triangular polarity of Shabda, Artha, and Pratyaya, sound, object, and correlation. In this, mantra specially seizes upon the first and leaves the other two to Yantra and Tantra respectively. It is for Yantra to design the power diagram of the object, and for Tantra to shrew the chandas, that's ritam or right process, of interrelation and adjustment. In doing sadhana with mantra, both Vyaharana and Anusmarana, that is, meditating on the meaning, should consort, and the two principles, Agni and Soma, should be harmonized. In Hamsa, for example, Agni is especially emphasized in Sa, and Soma in Ham. If the functional balance be disturbed in Japa, an excess of Agni Matra will be induced, and the irritation factor, or Rajas, while that of Soma, the lassitude and the depression factor, or tamas. Such imbalance should be rectified by equating excess and deficiency. In Om, for example, A is Agni and Soma. When you require fire, make your Om rise from Manipura at the navel, the seat of fire. When you require soothing peace, shift your emphasis to the bridge at the base of the forehead and make your as collecting nada merge slowly in the nectar Soma. So each mantra may be used as self-adjusting process for balancing Agni and Soma by appropriate Yantra and Tantra. In the doing of Om, for instance, we have to shift from Manipura to Agnya and vice versa. From Udaya Nada, meaning rising, to Vilaya Nada, meaning setting. The requisite pattern has to settle on the ground of actual practice, sadhana, which commonly begins as vachika, or vocal, then becomes upanshu, or sub-vocal, and finally settles as manasa, or mental, when the deeper resonance effects, the reshuffling, reforming effects of vak in the system become conserved and heightened to the point of meru. What is yantra? Vak as the exponent of power, or prana, becomes mantra when it operates on a matrix and evolves it to a requisite level of efficiency for the attainment of an end. So it is operative power which aims at realizing an end. It works from the nabhi, the navel of power organized. Yantra is the design of the requisite disposition, adjustment and control of power which mantra has set in operation. So it is the means, the instrument or apparatus. Tantra shows the right way or method, the regulating rhythm. It is evident that the three are interlinked together. The bija hrim, for instance, to be operative must combine the three. As mantra it evolves the nabhi. H, R, and I trace the yantra of power disposition, and Chandra Bindu is the indicator of the pattern of power operation. The latter two, the means and method as we have called them, refer specially to Ara and Nemi, as mantra refers to Nabhi. Yantra is an inquiry relating to the dynamic form, pattern, and diagram of a thing, process or relation by means of which that thing, process, or relation can be so operated as to be productive of the result or end aimed at. As in mantra, in yantra also we have commonly to start from sthula or gross and proceed to shukshma, that is subtle, and karana or causal. The yantra of utmost potency is what relates to the core or nabhi of things, called hrika or core picture, of which the bindu is the ultimate form or parakashta. So bindu has been conceived as the infinitesimally perfect universe. If we can operate from bindu itself, we operate from the most perfect causal yantram. So mantra, yantra, and tantra all naturally evolve from bindu, and they all go back to it for their final synthesis and repose. Bindu is the magnum matrix. A yantra is the more potent and suitable one, the closer it can approximate to and bear directly upon the Bindu. What is Tantra? Tantra, in its extended sense, is a science, one may call it esoteric, when it ventures beyond the empirical, as well as the art of realization. As a science, it has to enunciate its first principles, promulgate its fundamental theory and systematic doctrine. Basically, this is tantric metaphysics and philosophy. But as an art, it has to make good, where and as far as possible, its theoretical doctrine by adequate and conclusive experimental demonstration. For an appreciation of both, we must refer to the standard works on the subject, those of Arthur Avalon in particular, and to our Japastutram, the bigger work. In the special sense, Tantra means the Ritam, the right way or method of achieving what mantra means and yantra designs. If mantra is the operative formula and yantra the operative form, then Tantra is the actual suitable formulation itself. What is Kundalini? Kundalini is the store or magazine of unlimited reserve power seated at the nucleus of every form of existence. It is static or potential in relation to what may be kinetic or manifestly operative. This latter is measurable or calculable with necessary limitation of data and with reference to chosen frames of reference. Kundalini in her perfection is associated with and coils itself up round the Bindu, that is, the point of utmost intensity, while in its fully uncoiled, manifested form it exhibits nada, the continuum of inmost intensity. The mystic 3 coils and a half shew the basic disposition of Kala. These may be variously interpreted. Every fundamental yantra or diagram turns many facets of meaning, so there is no need for rigid bound, patented interpretation. From the mantra point of view, the 3 coils and a half may represent the Om, 3, and Ardhamatra, half, of Om or of Hri, and Ardhamatra or Chandabindru of Hrim. From the yantra point of view, the basic Bindu, Bindu positing itself as a process line, and Bindu evolving difference in sense and angular relation, from which triangle, circle, and so on emerge, the last specially implying Ardhamatra from the Tantra point of view, a Kriya or process starting from a center, its lines of projection or influence, its orbits of reactions, and Ardhamatra assigning the Chanda as Setu Sandhi Meru. Kundalini is a cosmic principle. In our own organisms, it is seated principally at the base center called Muladhara. Where is this to be located in the organism? And where are the chakras and the path of Sushumna along which Kundalini, when roused, ascends? What, again, do the chakric diagrams and varnas associated with them imply? Further, does Kundalini actually vacate its seat when it goes up the path of Sushumna? Or, as we have maintained in our correspondence, Is it a process analogous to electrical induction and not to conduction? Is it the nature of ejection and not of projection? In former cases, the source apparently loses what the receiver gains. In the correspondence which is here reprinted, it is to the last question that we have sought to give an answer. It is clear that Sushumna and the chakras are not grossly anatomical. That is, certain nerve routes and ganglia are not to be taken as their physical and physiological basis, although in the workings of the physical organism correspondence may be traced, connecting the two systems collaterally. The chakra is a subtler and more potent apparatus, Yantram, which controls the economy of our whole being, physical, vital, and conscious, subconscious and superconscious. As to the question of the constitution of the chakras, particularly that relating to chakric number and allocation of the matrices, we do not offer an explanation here, though these are vital matters that must be deeply gone into and as far as possible clarified. We have, however, given a few suggestive hints before, and more particularly in the Japa Sutram, the bigger work. As regards the varnas, or sound elements, which characterize each of the chakras, what is required is a varna, which means a type, a color also, be basically understood and acted upon. It has been called a matrix, a creative evolving factor. So any object or relation is formulated, for example, an atomic system or a germ cell in the natural order, by its own characteristic varnas, which make its dynamic formula. In this, it exceeds a chemical formula, H2O for example. Basically, connected with the matrix is number, commensurable or otherwise, and also magnitude, not restricted to 3 dimensions, and sense. This last is the commutative factor in all realms. These 3 cooperate in any pattern of existence and its behavior, including the chakras, which are specialized power origins, power diagrams, and power appliances. Needless to say, that power as physical or physiological is gross, restricted measure only of the power whole, which is identical with Brahman. As regards the rousing of Kundalini and the sadhana prescribed, be it noted that this is practically in the nature of a graded, graduated approach. First of all, the sadhaka can do no better than uttering, as in Bhutta Shuddhi, or purifying the elements, the object and process formula. If this be effectively done in vidya, meaning right mode or way, and shraddha, meaning right mood and accord, he rises from the plane of mere vocal utterance and visual imagery to the next stage, where the gross outer vibrations of the function become recessive, and the subtle inner vibrations and their deeper resonance effects become dominant, which is the necessary prelude to the actual rousing of Kundalini. Next becomes possible his actual ascent along the path of Sushumna, and along with it an actual objectified apprehension of the chakras one after another. After this, the comprehension and revelation of the sealed significance and possession of the frozen unlimited power capital of the chakras begins. Finally, when both the Agnya and Sahasrara have been mastered by divine grace, The sadhaka is blessed, and his sadhana consummated with a full, integral realization of the sublimated and superb significance of life and existence as a whole, of which the chakras and the rest have been an illustrative diagrammatic pranic rendering and an intensive psychodynamic unfolding.